I want you to picture something for me. Picture the largest stadium you've ever seen in your life. Now make it bigger. Now make the walls out of something that isn't stone, something that hums, something that pulses with light like it's breathing. Now fill it with 80,000 beings who don't look like you. Different shapes, different sizes. Some of them float. Some of them have eyes where you'd expect ears. Some of them breathe through membranes on the sides of their necks that flutter and ripple when they get excited. Now picture them all screaming. That's the Ketharin Grand Coliseum, on the capital world of Vethka Prime, on a Tuesday afternoon in what the Empire calls the year of the 43rd succession. I just call it the worst day of my life. My name is Caius Varro. I'm from a place called Meridian Station, a mid-tier human settlement on the outer rim of what the Galactic Compact calls fringe space. That's what they call our territory, fringe. Like we're the rough edge of a piece of fabric they keep meaning to hem but never get around to. I was a soldier once. Colonial Defense Forces, 7 years. Did 3 deployments, 2 of them in actual combat. Came home with a scar on my left shoulder, and a general sense that the galaxy didn't particularly care whether I lived or died. Then I made a mistake. I won't go into all of it, that's a different story, but the short version is, I punched the wrong man. He wasn't just any man. He was a Ketharin trade commissioner. I didn't know that when I hit him. I just knew he had his hand on a woman who was asking him to stop, and something in my chest decided that the diplomatic implications could wait. They couldn't. 18 months later, I was property of the Ketharin Imperial Gladiatorial Commission, fighting for my life in the lower tiers of the circuit. You work your way up if you survive. Most people don't. I'd been in the arena 11 times, won 9, lost twice but didn't die, which in the lower circuit counts as half a victory. The crowd here doesn't love you for winning. They love you for making them feel something. They love you for the noise you make when you bleed. I was learning to speak their language. Not Ketharin, the language of suffering. It's universal, apparently. But none of that prepared me for what happened on the day they brought the princess in. Let me tell you what a Tuesday in the holding cells smells like. Metal, old blood, even after the cleaning drones run their sweeps. Something chemical that burns the back of your throat, some kind of sterilizing agent they use that I think is actually toxic to humans at low doses. I'd mentioned this once to my handler, a 6-limbed Ketharin named Preth who wore his status beads on all 3 of his right arms. He'd said, and I'm translating roughly here, humans are known to survive things they shouldn't. This is one of them. And then he moved on. That's the Ketharin relationship with humans in a nutshell. We're curiosities, we're anomalies. We're too fragile to be respected, and too stubborn to die when we're supposed to, which the Ketharins find simultaneously irritating and fascinating. We've been in the Compact for 60 years. We've signed the treaties. We've agreed to the terms. But in private, in the places where the cameras that broadcast diplomatic meetings aren't running, we're still the weird new species who showed up and refused to understand that the universe has a hierarchy. I get it, I do. I even understand why the hierarchy feels natural to them. The Ketharins have been the dominant species in this arm of the galaxy for 3,000 years. The Velhari have been their allies for 2,000. The Dresh, the Sorvani, the Meloth, all of them have had centuries to figure out their place. Humans have been out here for 60 years, and we keep doing things like punching trade commissioners and winning fights we're not supposed to win. We're exhausting, I understand. But that Tuesday was different. I heard it before I saw anything. A commotion in the upper corridor, not the usual pre-match noise, not the crowd warming up. This was different, sharper. It had that specific pitch of something going wrong in a controlled environment, the sound of people who are supposed to maintain order starting to feel unsure of themselves. 2 cells down from me, a Velhari fighter named Gruth pressed his broad face against his door grate and rumbled something in his own language. The translation chip in my ear, a second-hand model I'd traded a week of protein rations for, rendered it as, Something royal. I smell something royal. Velhari have an olfactory sense roughly 12 times more sensitive than humans. If Gruth said he smelled royalty, I believed him. 20 minutes later, the corridor doors opened. And they brought her in. She wasn't what I expected. I don't know what I expected exactly. I'd heard stories about the Solari. Everyone in fringe space had heard stories. They were a species from the inner systems, closer to the galactic core, technically independent but increasingly squeezed by the Ketharan Empire's slow expansion. They were described variously as luminescent, fragile, and diplomatically naive, which in compact terms means they kept trying to negotiate when everyone else was preparing for war. The princess was none of those things, not the way I'd imagined them. She was tall, taller than me, and I'm not short. She moved with a kind of deliberateness that some people mistake for arrogance, but which I recognized immediately as the posture of someone in pain who is refusing to show it. Her skin had a quality to it that I can only describe as existing between silver and gold, like light through thin cloud. Her eyes were a deep amber, almost orange, with a secondary lid translucent, like a second layer, that would sometimes close over the amber in a slow, involuntary blink that reminded me of a bird. She was wearing the arena tunic, rough-woven gray fabric, sleeveless, knee-length, the standard uniform of those condemned to fight. Someone had cut her hair. It had clearly been much longer, and whoever had done the cutting had done it unkindly, leaving it jagged above her shoulders, a mark of humiliation. I recognized it. They'd done the same to me when I first arrived. Her wrists were bound with Ketharan restraint cuffs, glowing blue rings that would deliver a neural disruption shock if she moved too fast or in a direction the sensor didn't like. She had 3 of them on each wrist. 6 restraint cuffs for 1 prisoner. That told me something. She came through the corridor flanked by 4 Imperial guards, and every fighter in every cell went quiet as she passed. Not out of respect, necessarily. More out of the instinctive stillness that falls over creatures when something significant enters the space. Like the air changes, like the room decides to pay attention. She looked straight ahead, didn't look at any of us. Her jaw was set, her hands beneath the cuffs were still. The cell they put her in was between mine and Gruth's. After the guards left, the corridor was silent for a long time. Then Gruth, very quietly, said something in Velhari that my chip translated as, "That is the youngest daughter of the Solari sovereign. I saw her once at the compact assembly when I was still free." A pause. She sang the Accord hymn. Her voice made the walls vibrate. I looked through my door grate at the new cell. The princess was sitting against the far wall with her knees drawn up to her chest. She was looking at the ceiling. Her secondary lids were closed. She looked, I thought, like someone who had moved past fear into something quieter. Something that lives on the other side of fear, where you've done all your panicking and now you're just waiting. I'd been in that place, after the verdict, after the transport. I knocked on the wall between us. 3 light taps, non-threatening, just "I'm here." Nothing for a moment. Then very faintly, 2 taps back. Her name was Sale. Not Princess Sale, not Your Radiance, not any of the formal addresses I'd later learned she was owed by Solari custom. Just Sale. She told me that through the wall on the first night, when the arena went dark and the only light was the slow blue pulse of the restraint cuffs and the distant orange glow of the city visible through a small slit of window near the ceiling. The full name is Cylindra Vel Korath Anu. My mother called me Sale. My people call me Radiance. The Ketharans call me property of the state. A pause. I prefer Sale. Her compact standard was excellent. Better than mine, honestly. Crisp, precise, with the faintest musical quality that I guessed was a Solari accent. A slight elongation of vowels, a precision on consonants that made her sound like she was reading poetry, even when she was saying something ordinary. "What did you do?" I asked. It wasn't a rude question in the arena cells. It was how you said hello. "I refused to sign a treaty." That's it. The treaty would have ceded the Solari Reach, all 7 of our inhabited systems, to the Ketharan sovereignty. It would have effectively ended my people as a self-governing civilization. My father signed. My 3 siblings signed. A pause. I didn't. I thought about that. So they're making an example of you. Yes. In the arena. Yes. Does your father know? A longer pause this time. My father signed the treaty. I didn't say anything to that. Some silences need to be left alone. After a while she spoke again. "What did you do?" I told her about the trade commissioner, about the woman, about the hand. She was quiet for a moment. "You hit him because of her, a stranger." "Yeah." "Why?" I thought about it, gave her the honest answer, even though I'm not sure it's a good one. "Because someone had to." She was quiet for a long time after that, long enough that I thought maybe she'd fallen asleep or decided the conversation was over. Then, very softly, "What is your name?" Caius Varro." "Caius?" She said it carefully, like she was learning the shape of it. "Where are you from?" "Meridian Station, Outer Fringe." I've seen Meridian Station on maps. It looks very small. It is. Is it beautiful? I thought about Meridian Station, about the dust-red landscape and the low gravity that made everything feel slightly dreamlike, about the way the twin moons looked at conjunction, sitting side by side in the sky like old friends, about the smell of recycled air in the station corridors, and the way the ventilation system had a slight whistle in it that you stopped noticing after your first week, but that you missed, somehow, when you were gone. "Yeah," I said, "it's beautiful." They briefed us both the next morning. A Ketharan official named Voss, officious, impatient, with the particular energy of a bureaucrat who has been promoted past his actual competence, read from a data scroll without making eye contact with either of us. The princess had been entered as a combatant in the 43rd Succession Games. These were the Empire's premier entertainment spectacle, held every imperial generation, roughly every 40 years, to celebrate the continuity of Ketharan dominance. High-profile matches, packed arenas, broadcast across 600 worlds. The princess specifically had been slotted for what Voss called a revelation match. This was a type of match I'd heard about but never seen. It was when the Empire wanted to make a point, not just win a fight. In a revelation match, the condemned combatant, usually someone with political significance, was placed against a series of escalating opponents. They fought until they couldn't anymore. It was designed to be conclusive. Designed to prove, publicly and permanently, that some things are beyond the capacity of the defeated to change. She was listed as Sail Solari Dissenter, not Princess, not Sailindra, Dissenter, a word stripped of royalty and laden with disapproval. I was listed separately for my own match that same day. Straightforward paired combat medium tier, nothing special. What wasn't in either of our briefings, what Voss didn't say, and what I only figured out later, was that the Imperial program had been set up very carefully to put the two of us in the arena at the same time in adjacent matches. Whether that was deliberate planning or bureaucratic accident, I never found out. But I think it was deliberate. I think someone wanted me to see her. I think someone wanted me to watch, and then make a choice, and then have that choice broadcast across 600 worlds. I think the Empire thought they knew what a human gladiator would choose. They thought wrong. The afternoon of the matches, the corridor came alive. This is the part of arena life that I've never found a way to accurately describe to people who haven't experienced it. There's a transformation that happens in the hour before you go out. It's in the sounds, the way the distant crowd builds from a murmur to a presence, like weather approaching. It's in the smell, something animal and electric, the collective chemistry of 80,000 living things working themselves into anticipation. It's in your own body, which starts doing things you didn't ask it to. My hands get cold. That's my tell. Other fighters pace or talk too much or go completely silent. I get cold hands and a very clear head, which sounds like an advantage and sometimes is. That afternoon, my hands were cold, my head was clear, and I was thinking about the conversation through the wall, about someone who had refused to sign when everyone around her signed, about someone sitting against a wall with her knees drawn up, waiting for whatever came next. The preparation handlers came through and got us ready. Armor, light stuff, the arena standard, a weapon assignment. I got a pulse lance for my match, roughly equivalent to a spear, but with a charge in the tip that delivers a kinetic burst on contact, like being hit by a hammer wrapped in lightning. It's a weapon that rewards precision, which I appreciated. I'd had 3 weeks of training with it and had gotten reasonably competent. Sale was prepped separately. I heard them moving in her corridor, heard the sound of the restraint cuffs coming off. There'd be no point in keeping them on in the arena, she'd need her hands. Heard voices, Ketharin commands, her brief, clear responses. They gave her, I found out later, a light blade, a one-handed short sword, ceremonial weight, decorative enough to look good on broadcast, functional enough to be technically considered a real weapon. Against the Revelation match opponents, augmented Ketharin military fighters who volunteered for arena work during the Succession Games, a light ceremonial blade was more symbol than substance. That was the point. They take you out through the gate of consideration. That's its official name. In fighter slang, we call it the long walk, which is exactly what it is. A corridor about 400 meters long, straight, with no turns, just you and the sound of your own breathing, and the crowd getting louder with every step. I'd walked it 11 times. I was at the end of the corridor, my gate on the left, hers on the right, when I looked across and saw her. She was looking back at me. She looked the way she'd sounded through the wall, steady, present, past the fear part into the quiet part, wearing the arena tunic and light armor, holding the ceremonial blade in her right hand with her thumb curled around the grip, in a way that suggested someone had taught her to hold it, but she hadn't held it much. She had amber eyes and a jaw that was set like concrete. She looked at me, and I looked at her, and we had, I think, about 20 seconds before the gates opened. I don't know why I did what I did next. I've had people ask me since, journalists, military analysts, philosophers. I've had a Ketharin academic write an entire paper trying to explain it through the lens of human evolutionary psychology. I've had a Solari poet write a song about it that apparently became very famous in the inner systems, though I've never heard it. None of their explanations feel quite right, because none of them account for the simplest version of it, which is, I'd listened to her talk through a wall in the dark, and I knew what she was, and I looked at the ceremonial blade in her hand, and I thought, someone has to. Just that. Someone has to. I stepped to the right, to her gate side of the corridor. I caught the eye of her gate handler, a young Ketharin functionary who was already too far into this job to stop anything from happening. I put my hand flat on the wall beside her gate in the gesture that, in the arena circuits, means switch, a request for a match reassignment, almost never done, almost never granted. The gate handler looked at me, looked at the data scroll he was holding, looked at the time display on the wall. And then, because we had 40 seconds, and because he was a young functionary who was not paid enough to argue with a human gladiator who had won 9 consecutive matches, and was looking at him with cold hands and very clear eyes, he transmitted the request upward. It came back approved in 15 seconds. The Empire, I think, said yes because they thought it was funny. A human gladiator volunteering for the Revelation match slot, volunteering to fight in the arena beside or instead of a Solari princess. They probably thought it would be dramatic, good broadcast content. They were right that it was dramatic. They were wrong about all the rest of it. Part 2, the revelation match. The arena opened above us like a wound in the sky. That's the only way I can describe it. When you come up through the gate, when the floor plates slide back and the lift platform carries you up into the light, it's not like walking into a stadium. It's like the world breaks open and swallows you. The sound alone is physical. 80,000 voices become a pressure, a weather system. Your chest vibrates with it. Your teeth ache. I'd experienced it 11 times. It was different this time. This time when I came up, the crowd didn't make its usual noise. There was a ripple of confusion, a reconfiguration of expectation. The match had been billed as the Solari Princess in her revelation match. The crowd had come for that particular spectacle, for the political theater of a royal house brought low. And instead here came this me. Human male, medium height, light arena armor, pulse lance, the wrong shape, the wrong species, something substituted. The confusion lasted about 6 seconds. Then someone in the upper tiers started making noise. I'm not sure what the noise meant. My translation chip struggles with crowd aggregate, but it spread and changed shape. And by the time I'd reached the center of the arena floor, what had been confusion had become something I'd heard before but never directed at me like this. Curiosity. The arena floor was a composite material, pale gray, engineered for even footing, with drainage channels built in that I tried not to think too hard about. The arena walls rose 70 meters on all sides, interrupted by the massive screen panels that showed live footage of the match from 30 different angles, so the crowd in the back rows could see the fighters' faces. The sky above was Vethka Prime's natural sky, a deep bruised purple in the afternoon, with the system star low and orange on the horizon, throwing long shadows across the arena floor. I stood in the center and waited. On the opposite side of the arena, the opponent's gate opened. There were 3 of them, Imperial military volunteers, as I'd expected, Ketharin, heavily built, wearing the full ceremonial armor of the Imperial Guard with modifications for arena combat. They were augmented, which was legal in revelation matches, neural reflex enhancement, subdermal impact absorption, joint strength multipliers. They weren't just soldiers. They were soldiers running partly on technology. 3 of them, 1 of me. 1 pulse lance, no armor augmentation, no tech assists. The crowd made a sound I recognized, even without translation. This won't last long. I put my feet in the right position, the way the training master had drilled me. Weight forward, lance balanced. Took a breath and let it out slow. The first one came in fast. I want to say I was elegant. I want to give you the heroic version. The honest version is that the first 30 seconds were brutal, and I nearly died in them. He came in fast, faster than I'd anticipated, which meant the reflex enhancement was set higher than standard, probably 60% above baseline. He had a combat staff, long, weighted at both ends, a weapon designed for crowd-pleasing displays of speed. He swung it in a figure 8, and the second end came around at my head while I was still tracking the first. I got the lance up in time to deflect but not stop it. The impact drove the lance back into my own shoulder, which is exactly what it was designed to do. My shoulder went numb from the nerve pressure. I went down on one knee. 80,000 beings held their breath. I found out later from the broadcast footage that the screen panels all showed my face in that moment. Close-up. Human face on alien broadcast, on a platform watched across 600 worlds. Whatever expression was on my face is something I don't have access to from the inside. I don't know what it looked like. I know what it felt like. It felt like Tuesday, like another Tuesday in the arena, like the 11th time and the 9th time and the 2nd time when I'd lost, and every other time I'd been in a place where the situation was bad and I was tired, and someone was trying very hard to make me stop existing. It felt like not yet. I came up off my knee before he could press the advantage. Used the motion of standing to put rotational force on the lance, which I'd kept hold of, and drove the charged tip into the gap between his arm and his torso armor. The kinetic burst fired on contact. He went sideways. Not down. He was augmented and his impact absorption took most of it, but sideways. And sideways in arena combat is a gift because it gives you angles. I took the angle. The thing about fighting three augmented opponents isn't that they're individually unbeatable. It's the coordination. Military-trained combatants who have practiced together have a rhythm, call, and response, like music. One of them moves and the others fill the space his movement creates. When it works, it's seamless. You can't find a gap because the gaps don't exist. When it doesn't work, it's because something breaks the rhythm. I broke the rhythm the only way I could think of, by being faster than they expected to need to account for. Human baseline reaction time, I've been told by Catharan sports analysts writing about arena results, is statistically unremarkable. Faster than some species, slower than others. We're not special on the charts. What the charts don't account for, what I've spent 7 years in the Colonial Defense Forces and 11 arena matches learning, is that human beings have a very specific relationship with being in danger of dying. Something in us, something very old, goes to work when the situation gets bad enough. Not enhancement, not technology, just something that kicks in when the other options close off. I don't know what to call it. The Catharan crowd, watching me move through those first 3 minutes against 3 augmented soldiers, would later call it something in their language that my chip translated inconsistently. Sometimes the translation came out as desperation. Sometimes it came out as fury. One time, memorably, it came out as the quality humans have when they've stopped caring about dying. That's probably the most accurate one. I put the first one down for good at the 2-minute mark. A shot to the knee joint where the augmentation interface created a vulnerability, exactly as the training master had marked on a diagram 3 weeks ago. He'd said if you ever face augmented military opponents, and he'd said it with the tone of someone who didn't expect I'd ever face augmented military opponents, that's where you go. His knee buckled. He stayed down. The second one was harder. He was faster than his partner and he adapted after watching me take down the first. He stopped swinging wide and started working close, which neutralized the lance. I had to abandon it, dropped it, stepped inside his guard, and did something I hadn't done since my last deployment. I fought dirty. Elbow to the cranial ridge. Grip on the arm holding his weapon. Twist. The augmentation made him stronger than me, but in close quarters, the strength enhancement has a lag in the joints. You have to be pulling against it before it registers. He went down. 3 minutes, 2 down, 1 left. The third one had stopped moving. He was standing maybe 15 meters away and he was just watching me. His weapon was still raised. His combat posture was technically correct, but he had stopped advancing. I stood there catching my breath with my lance retrieved and 2 of his partners on the ground, and I looked at him and I thought, he's not scared. He's not going to surrender. The augmentation alone would prevent a standard fear response, but he'd stopped advancing. He was looking at me the way you look at something you don't have a framework for. The arena was completely silent. 80,000 beings, and you could hear the wind across the desert beyond the walls. Then the crowd broke, and the sound was enormous, and the third fighter came at me, and I planted my feet and we finished it. When it was over, I was standing in the middle of the arena floor in the late afternoon light of Vethka Prime, breathing hard, with blood on my left arm from a cut I hadn't felt happening, and 80,000 beings were making sounds that I still can't entirely translate. I know some of what they were saying. Fragments came through the chip. Human, the word for us, used in about 40 different ways simultaneously. Impossible, or not supposed to. Why? The question without the word, just the tone. And underneath all of it, quiet but building, one phrase that the chip gave me clearly. What is this creature? Not an insult, not contempt, something else. I stood there and looked at the screens showing my face back at me, and I thought about Sale in the cell, and the taps through the wall, and what she'd said when I'd told her about the trade commissioner. Someone had to. I lowered the lance to my side. And then I did something I'd never done in 11 arena matches. Something I'd never planned, never rehearsed, never discussed with the training master. Something that came from the same place as the cold hands and the clear head, and the very old something that kicks in when the options close off. I turned to face the Imperial box. The Emperor's representative, not the Emperor himself, who doesn't attend matches, but the Grand Arbiter of the Succession Games, a senior official named Lord Commander Vreth who wore the Imperial colors and sat on a raised platform behind a field of protective glass, was looking down at me. I looked up at him, and I raised my right hand flat palm outward in the human gesture that means, stop, wait, I have something to say. The arena didn't know what it was looking at. In Catharan gladiatorial tradition, there is a gesture of address to the box. It's formal, specific, a closed-fist salute that acknowledges the authority of the watching power. Gladiators don't improvise. They don't make new gestures. The protocol is the protocol. I hadn't made the protocol gesture. I'd made a human one that no one in that arena had a context for. Lord Commander Vreth, to his credit, or possibly because he was so surprised that his social reflexes shut down, did not immediately signal for my removal. He sat in the box behind his protective glass and he looked at me. I kept my hand up. The silence stretched. Then, and this is the part that the Catharan academic wrote his paper about, the part that the Solari poet put in the song, the arena address system activated. I found out later that it was a junior systems operator, a 17-year-old Catharan functionary doing his first games assignment, who activated it. He said afterward that he thought it was what he was supposed to do, that when a fighter made an address gesture to the box, you opened the address channel. He hadn't been briefed that the gesture was human, not standard. He didn't know it wasn't supposed to happen. He just opened the channel. And my voice went to 8,000 speakers across the Colosseum, and to the 30 broadcast platforms relaying the Succession Games, and to 600 worlds. I want to be very clear about something. I'm not a speaker. I'm not a politician. I have no training in rhetoric or diplomacy or public address. I'm a soldier and a gladiator, and I come from a colony station where the biggest political event of the year is the vote on ventilation maintenance funding. What I said in that arena was not elegant. It was not rehearsed. It was not strategic. It was just what came out of my mouth when I had 8,000 speakers and 600 worlds, and a silence so complete I could hear my own blood moving. I said, "Her name is Sale. She's the youngest daughter of the Solari sovereign. She's in the cells under this arena right now because she refused to sign a document that would have taken her people's freedom away. She could have signed it. Everyone else did. She didn't." A pause. I was breathing hard still. My arm was bleeding. I probably looked rough. I'm a human. I'm from a place called Meridian Station, and I'm here because I hit someone who deserved it, and your legal system disagrees. I've fought 11 times in this arena. I've given you what you came to see 11 times. Another pause. I looked at Vreth. I'm not going to fight her. I'm not going to watch her fight. I'm not going to stand here and perform for you while you make an example of someone who did the bravest thing I've ever heard of, who said no when everyone else said yes. The silence. You want a revelation match. Here's the revelation. You can put us both back in the cells and execute us, or you can let us walk out of here, and either way, 600 worlds just watched a human gladiator and a Solari princess stand in your arena and tell you that your empire doesn't get to decide what's worth dying for. I lowered my hand. Her name is Sale, remember it. And then the arena exploded. Not with one sound, not with one reaction. 80,000 beings, and the reaction split in real time like a crack running through stone. Some of them louder in anger, some of them louder in something I couldn't name, some of them just loud, for reasons that had nothing to do with what I'd said and everything to do with the feeling in the room. The electricity that runs through a crowd when something happens that the crowd didn't expect and can't immediately categorize. Lord Commander Vreth was on his feet in the box. Imperial guards were moving through the stands. The address system cut out. Someone with more authority than the 17-year-old had closed the channel. And I stood there in the center of the arena, bleeding and breathing, and I thought, well, that's done. Part 3, what happened after? They took me back to the cells. Not gently. 4 guards, restraint cuffs, the whole procedure, done quickly and not kindly in the way that the Ketharan security apparatus operates when it has been embarrassed and needs to do something with the body that caused the embarrassment. They put me in solitary, a cell deeper in the complex, away from the main holding corridor without the lights lit near the ceiling. Just the cell and the blue pulse of the cuffs and the sound of my own breathing. I sat against the wall with my knees drawn up. I thought about Sale. I didn't know where they'd put her. I didn't know what the speech had changed, if anything. My understanding of Ketharan imperial procedure was that this kind of public breach had about 4 possible outcomes, ranging from executed quietly and quickly to used as a political scapegoat in a complicated proceeding that takes months. I didn't know which we were in. I didn't know if she was okay. I tried the wall tap, 3 taps, nothing came back. So I sat there. What happened in the next 72 hours, I experienced only in fragments, because no one was particularly interested in keeping me informed. What I know now, from accounts I pieced together afterward. The broadcast had gone out. Not just to the 600 worlds on the standard relay. A scrambled feed had pushed it further, to independent networks, to free transmission nodes, to the kind of channels that the compact media authority would rather didn't exist. By the time the Ketharan government issued a suppression order, the speech had already been seen by somewhere between 2 and 4 billion people across the galaxy. 2 to 4 billion people heard me say her name is Sale. I want to be honest about what happened next, because I've heard versions of it that are more flattering to me than the truth, and I'm trying to give you the truth. What happened next was not me. It was not my doing. I was in a cell with no information and cold hands. What happened was the Solari. The Solari Compact Delegation, a small office, politically weakened, technically bound by the treaty the sovereign had signed, watched the broadcast. The diplomat in charge of the delegation was a woman named Vel Orath, who had served the Solari government for 30 years and who had, reportedly, spent the night after the treaty signing in her office without sleeping and without speaking to anyone. She watched the broadcast. She sent a transmission to 7 neutral party governments simultaneously: the Velhari Confederacy, the Meloth Cooperative, the Dresh Union, 3 Human Compact member states, and the Sorvani Free Assembly, with one line attached to a recording of the arena address. The line was, "A human gladiator has just done what our delegation failed to do. Does anyone still believe this treaty was legitimate?" The Velhari Confederacy was the first to respond publicly. Gruth's people, the ones with the sensitive noses, the ones who'd known something royal was in the air. They'd been watching the Ketharan expansion into the inner systems with the particular attention of a species who knew that the galaxy's next border dispute might be their own. The Velhari ambassador to the Compact issued a statement calling for a review of the Solari Sovereignty Treaty under Article 44 of the Compact Charter, the article that allows for treaty review when there is evidence of coercion or procedural impropriety. Within 48 hours, 4 of the 7 governments Vel Orith had contacted had issued similar calls. This doesn't sound dramatic written out in plain terms like that. Diplomatic statements, article citations, review requests. In a cell in the basement of the Ketharin Grand Coliseum, I had no idea any of it was happening. What I had was a visitor, 36 hours in. Not Preth, my usual handler. Not any guard I recognized. A woman, a Ketharin woman, which surprised me. The gladiatorial administration skewed heavily male in Ketharin culture in civilian clothes, which surprised me more. She came in alone, which surprised me most of all. She sat on the cell floor across from me, which surprised me so much that I genuinely didn't speak for a moment. She introduced herself as Advisor Neth, no further title. She worked, she said, in an office whose function she described as ensuring the long-term stability of imperial interests, which I took to mean she was intelligence. She had the controlled, careful quality of someone who had been in a lot of rooms where things were being decided and had learned to move through the world without creating more turbulence than necessary. She looked at my arm, where the cut had been dressed by a medical drone 6 hours after I'd returned from the arena. She said that was very stupid. I know, I said. And you're not sorry? No. She made a sound that in Ketharin registers somewhere between amusement and resignation. The compact is in an uproar. You understand that? I'm starting to guess. 4 governments have called for treaty review. The Velhari are threatening to pull their trade agreements with the Empire if the Solari princess is executed or harmed. The human compact states are in emergency session. A pause. You are, apparently, a political incident. I thought about that. Where's Sale? She looked at me for a moment. Safe for now. That's not an answer. It's the answer you're getting. Advisor Neth came back the next day. And the day after. On the 3rd day, she came in and sat down, and she looked at me with the careful expression of someone who is about to tell you something they've been authorized to tell you and nothing more. The Imperial Court is considering its options, she said. What are the options? Option 1. You are both executed quietly in the next 72 hours, and the Empire issues a statement about unauthorized gladiatorial activities and criminal misconduct, and the incident becomes a footnote. And the treaty review. They'd have to manage that separately. It's complicated. She paused. Option 2. The princess is released, quietly. Medical transfer, some narrative about the arena match being a misunderstanding at the administrative level. She returns to Solari territory. The treaty is reviewed. The Empire accepts modifications. What about me? She looked at me with the expression of someone who already knows the answer and doesn't enjoy saying it. Option 2 doesn't include you. I sat with that. Option 3, I asked. A pause. Option 3 is messy, she said carefully. Option 3 involves you becoming more politically visible than you currently are, which the Empire does not want, but which some parties believe may already be unavoidable. She looked at me steadily. Option 3 is that the Human Compact member states formally request your release as a citizen who was irregularly convicted, using provisions that, frankly, the Empire's legal team is still debating whether apply. Option 3 is that the Velhari add your name to their trade agreement conditions alongside the princess. Option 3 is that you become, she paused, as if choosing the word precisely, a symbol. I don't want to be a symbol. I know, she said, that's what makes you one.